Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Deltarune theory video, kind of. I got kind of caught between two theories this week, so I didn't end up getting either of them done. I was tossing up whether I wanted to do Chapter 5 predictions, or On the Origins of Darkness Part 2 for the new chapters, and I ended up doing half of both of them, so who knows what'll come out next. But for today, as a just kind of fun filler video, I'm just going to be ranking some of these theories from post Chapter 3 and 4. And I don't think I've touched on, other than that Des is the Knight, I don't think I've touched on any of these in one of my videos. Like the Knight identities, yes, I understand. I guess kind of chess theory, but not really. So yeah, this should be interesting. You'll get to hear my thoughts on some of these if you're interested at all. Starting with Chris Slash or Chris Cross or whatever you want to call it, is a little tough because I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on it. Like, yeah, it's possible, and I get the idea of it, right? If you never heard of this theory before, essentially when the Knight knocks down Ralsei and Susie after you defeat the Knight in that fight, it kind of looks like the slash is coming from the other direction, which is weird because, you know, it kind of seems like maybe Chris was the one who did it rather than the Knight. I just don't... I'm going to put it in not... Well... I think I have to put it in maybe. My personal feelings is that I don't think this is true, because the other option, right, because the slash is so strange looking, it's like the Knight just like teleported behind you or something without even moving. And to be fair, Chris also doesn't move, so either way, somebody's moving extremely quickly. I think this is meant to imply that the Knight was holding back, not that, you know, Chris is, you know, gonna knock us down and can also swoon people. I mean, I'd be interested to see a theory on that. Why do people think the Knight swoons you? It's a very interesting word choice. I don't know, maybe I'll make a whole theory on that someday, but I really don't have any idea. Let's save all the Knight ones till the very end. Carol Knight. Because, I mean, I've talked about those kind of to death, but to be fair, I haven't talked about Rudy Knight because it didn't even cross my mind until people brought it up in the comments. Des is Lost Girl. I don't know what that means, really, but, like, yes, Lost Girl is definitely associated with her a lot. And she is lost, and she is girl, so that makes sense. Chris has an hidden inventory. I mean, this is just true, right? Where's the knife? Like, we can't see it. I mean, I guess it could be part of the ball of junk, but that seems fairly unsafe. So yeah, I feel like Chris is probably carrying a couple things we can't see at least the knife, but maybe something else, who knows. Because it really seems like Ralsei is something that Chris is carrying around, whether that be the Red Horn Headband or something else. And obviously we cannot see that. And Chris knows that we can see in their inventory. Like, they delete their phone contacts as soon as the Knight starts calling them on the phone. So it would make sense if Chris is also hiding some things from us. I think this is probably true that Ralsei is the Red Horn Headband. In my own personal theories, I think Friend is the Red Horn Headband because that associates with all the Demon 666 stuff that's related with Gaster, and Friend and Gaster are kind of related for being outside entities that seem to come from the depths, and yeah, it's a whole little connected universe there. But other than the Red Horn Headband, I'm really not sure what Ralsei could be at this point. I mean, like, the green crayon visually makes sense. But unless we get some sort of... Like, we probably should have got something about the green crayon in Chapter 3 if that's the case, right? Like, Tenna talking about something to do with it being related to Azrael or, you know, something like that. And then the only other option is the knife, which is definitely an interesting choice. And I wouldn't be too shocked. But at the same time, nothing about Ralsei screams knife, so Ralsei knows about our soul. I mean, I feel like that is absolutely true. Ralsei seems to know everything about the battle system. Also, doesn't he talk about in the tutorial about what the soul is? I guess what this is trying to say is like Ralsei knows that the player is controlling the soul, not just like, you know, that Chris has a soul. But I feel like he must know that as well, because he intentionally guides the player away multiple times. So I feel like that's certainly true. Susie is the one who just found out about it, right? There's a lot of defenders for chess theory still. I'm surprised. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I made a lot of my own theories that got proven wrong, so I'm more willing to accept when a theory gets proven wrong, perhaps. But I get the idea of what people are saying as for how chess theory could still be alive. King is still a king, queen is still a queen. There was no chess entity in chapter 3 because Chris made the fountain, not the knight. And then the knight jumped in, and that sort of mimics how a knight works. And then the Titan is a tower, so it's kind of like a rook. The only problem with the rook thing, because like obviously the knight is a knight, and it does actually do the jumping over thing, so that's actually pretty strong. I just don't think the Titan can be a rook. I know it's a tower, like literally, but that's the only connection. Like I just said, with the knight, it acts like a knight in chess, and queen goes everywhere like a queen does in chess, and king stays at the end of the board like a king does in chess. The Titan doesn't move in straight lines like a rook. You know what I mean? Like, when we were making theories in the chapter 2 time period about what rook would be as an enemy, it's like, okay, he has to move through like straightforward means. He can't lie to you or something like that. And the Titan's just kind of like a big monster. Not to mention that like the Roaring has 3 of them. So are there 4 rooks? Although I guess 2 of the Titans in the thing are knights. So maybe there's this rook Titan, and then the big Titan in the middle of the Roaring image is also a rook. And then there's 2 knights as well, which I guess that does kind of math out. I'll put it in maybe. It's just like the first 3 chapters, it makes so much sense. But chapter 4, I just can't fully, I don't know. I can't fully figure it out. Whatever. Neo Woody theory. Okay, so this is like, I actually don't know what this is. I was gonna say it's the thing that people were saying where like, okay, Asgore also has a TV, so it's gonna be like Tenna 2, but that's not what this is about, really. I don't think so. I'm surprised there isn't Neo Flowery in here somewhere. Do people even remember Flowery? Is that why? Anyway, Neo Woody theory. Friend inside of me? Here, I'll put it in maybe. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but there's definitely something to do with friend inside of me. At this point, like, not only is there the soul inside of Chris, which is a friend inside of me, but also we have a villain in the story, seemingly named Friend, and, you know, I think Friend has some sort of possession power, so that makes a lot of sense, too. I don't know how a Woody would come. I shouldn't phrase it like that. I don't know how like a cowboy would come back other than I guess the TV, but then wouldn't that be evil Tenna? Because it's not like the Tenna has claimed this world the same way Tenna claimed chapter. I don't know. Anyway, severed hand theory. I think this is probably something. I don't know if it's necessarily like literally that Chris is going to lose their hand. But I think it could be that, like, metaphorically, Chris is going to lose their ability to interact with the world or something like that, you know? Because that's what a hand is essentially for. It certainly seems likely with the whole shadow crystal you saw through your hand thing, and then we got it, like, doubled down on with the severed hand in the Holiday Magic. Actually, that's another good example of the severed hand, quote-unquote, being the soul, right? Chris is going to lose the soul? I mean, we already kind of presumed that. But that could actually be what the whole severed hand thing is about. Like, we are going to lose Chris as a vessel, and Chris is our hands, right? Because when they're talking about the severed hand, what they find in there is us. That's interesting. That could be it. The night is Dess's remains. I mean, that's pretty vague, but I guess, you know, who knows? A zombie or like dust or, yeah. I don't think this is going to be true. Partially just because it's Undertale again. Like, you know, Flowey is like Azrael's dust spread on an object. I really don't think the night is going to be Dess's dust spread on an object specifically. I think it's going to be something like that, like where Dess is sort of, well, you all know my theory already if you've been watching my videos, but yeah, I think it's possible, but it's not like really likely. Feels weird to put Neo Woody above that, but that's because I don't really know what Neo Woody is. Sans Deltarune is Sans Undertale, probably. I mean, there's so many hints. The biggest one being it's raining somewhere else, and in the Deltarune soundtrack, the place where it rained. That really implies that the Undertale Sans knew about the Deltarune world, or something like that. Which would imply that he goes from Deltarune to Undertale. But I don't know, maybe like this is a Sans from some bad timeline of Undertale that saw that this universe was better and jumped ship. Like, I don't know. It's possible. But I think it's definitely pretty likely that Sans Deltarune and Sans Undertale are either the same person or they can talk to each other or something like that. This is going to make some people a little angry. As far as we know how Dark Worlds worked, this seems impossible. Unless you are thinking the roaring is going to happen in the middle of the festival, which is possible. Not, you know, going to discount the concept that the roaring could happen at the end of Chapter 5 or something. But when Chris opens... Well, okay, it's not Chris, it's the night. But then they exit out of the Dreamer House's door with the fountain inside. All the smoke billows out, right? But it's got nowhere to go. So it's not like the whole town became a dark world then. So you'd have to... How many dark fountains would you have to make to cover the entire town in darkness? Like, is it even possible? The smoke would continuously leach away. So, like, do you need to put a dome around the entire town for this to happen? Like, do you have to make the entire world a dark fountain for this to happen? Which is basically what the roaring is. So, you know, I don't think this is going to happen. Not a dark world, anyway. Maybe, like, the roaring version of a dark world, but not just a regular dark world, right? Friend is part of Sham. Maybe. This is like a 50-50. It's once again some weird wording from the Card Castle residents, specifically King. I talked about this in my Chris Knight video, where King suddenly is like, no, actually, I never met the Knight. Jevil told me all about the Knight. And also, Sham. Shame that Sham had to put Jevil away. Oh, the poor guy. And, you know, Friend's a cat, Sham's a cat. Sham's the one gathering the shadow crystals. Friend is the one related to the shadow crystals, like, probably manipulated Spamton. So it all kind of lines up. Which, again, kind of goes with this. I think this is slightly more likely, though, because, again, Sham's the one gathering all the crystals. So the fact that Sham might be the Weird Route's final boss does make sense to me. Although, the Shadow Crystals aren't necessarily the Weird Route. So actually, I'm going to put this in probably not. Because, like, we're so used to these, like, rigid paths from Undertale. But, like, there are, like, 4 separate routes going on right now. There's the Snowgrave route, like, Weird Route stuff. There's the Shadow Crystals secret boss stuff. There's the Eggman Forgotten Backrooms stuff. And then there's the main plot stuff. So it's like, I don't think Sham will be necessarily the boss of the Weird Route. Because the Weird Route is, like, on the same narrative level as the main route. And you can do the Shadow Crystals on the main route. Or you could do the Shadow Crystals on the Weird Route. You know what I mean? Susie will be the Weird Route boss. I mean, that's definitely more likely. if this was Susie will be a Weird Route boss, I'd be totally on board. So we'll go maybe on that one. It's definitely possible Susie could be the Weird Route boss. Like, narratively that makes sense, but I could also see it being a thing like Chapter 2's Weird Route, specifically, where, like, instead of fighting Queen, you fight Spampton, and you skip over Queen, but all that stuff is still there. You know what I mean? Like, we assume we're going to fight Susie in the normal route too, right? When Susie finds out about us betraying to the night, or finds out about the soul controlling Chris, or something like that. It definitely feels like there's going to be some sort of conflict to bring back versus Susie, even in the normal route. So she could get skipped over in the Weird Route, you know? Like, not literally skipped over, like we don't see from her, but in the same way as Queen, where, like, Queen went down without a fight. I think that could happen to Susie, just to really drive home how dire things have gotten. Asgore will be the Chapter 5 boss. This is probably. And then my reason for that is not just that, like, there's so much hinting towards Asgore's flower shop and, like, Asgore being a boss, but specifically that the prophecy that says Flower Man trapped in asylum has the same tag as the Queen's chariot cannot be stopped, and Lord of Screens slashed red by blade, cleaved red by blade, whatever, you know what I mean. They're all tagged boss, so that implies Asgore will be a boss on the same level as Queen and Tenna. So yeah, that's my main piece of evidence. Dark World and Flower Shop. I mean, this is the same level as this. It's possible that Asgore could be in a Dark World somewhere else. Actually, no, I'll put this one up here. Because that has some actual solid evidence. This one, it's possible Asgore could be in a Dark World somewhere else. But not very likely. I feel like the Flower Shop has been set up a lot. We haven't been allowed in there since Chapter 1. Isn't that weird? It's like one of the only places in town that we were able to visit in Chapter 1 only. I'm trying to think of another place where we were only able to visit in Chapter 1 and could never come back. I mean, other than the Card Kingdom. It's kind of cheating. I don't think there's another one, right? So yeah, that seems very suspicious. Asgore killed Des. I am so torn on this. Because, like, obviously he did something that caused Des to disappear. But I don't think it can be that he killed Des. Actually, I'm putting this in impossible, now that I think about it. I don't think it can be that he killed Des. Because if Asgore killed Des and everybody in the town knew about it, why would Noelle still be searching for Des, right? Unless we're presuming that, like, Asgore covered it up? But then why is he trying to prove his innocence if he covered it up? Who else would even know about it? If Carol knew about it, do we really think Carol would let him, anywhere near Noelle? Like, I don't know. I don't think he can literally have killed Des. I think his, nonchalance with potentially some sort of security code to the shelter could be what led Des to disappear. But I don't think he can literally have killed her. Susie's not the second hero in the prophecy, right? So the second hero in the prophecy has a sword, and then Susie is called the Dragon by Gerson, which is notably not one of the three heroes, obviously, because the three heroes stopped the dragon. And then there's also the girl in the prophecy, which it seems like Susie could be. Seems like the second hero could be Noelle, because Noelle can wield swords, even though we have never been able to equip her with swords. She can wield the Jingle Blade and the Black Shard. And, I mean, we've talked about this plenty of times, that if Susie hadn't shown up exactly when she did in Chapter 1, it probably would have been Noelle and Chris that went to get the chalk. And, then we would have a normal route, quote unquote. And it seems like the weird route might be restoring this normal quote-unquote route, where we have like total and complete control over everything. So yeah, I think this is quite likely. I won't put it indefinitely, but I think it's quite likely. Actually, I should touch on this because I haven't talked about this since my very first video after Chapter 3 and 4 dropped. A lot of people have pushed back on the idea that the weird route is the prophecy. And I think I agree, sort of. I think what's happened is that Ralsei specifically says that no matter what you do, the prophecy will, the outcome won't change. It'll reappear somewhere else if you break it, right? And that seems very intentionally foreshadowing-y. So, potentially, if somebody changed the prophecy to get Noelle out of the second hero slot and now Susie is in there, that is a new prophecy, quote unquote, and it's not the weird route. But it is still the original, like we're still following the original path just with Susie instead of Noelle, right? So the weird route is bringing Noelle back into the main path of the prophecy where she was supposed to be originally, just in a kind of terrible, messed up way, you know, like we're bending back the reality that bent to accommodate Susie. That's my thought on it at this point, I think. So it's not necessarily that the weird route is literally the prophecy and that we're already on a, like we've already broken the prophecy by the nature of having Susie. It's more like the prophecy is set in stone and our current party was not the original intended party from like Gaster or, you know, whoever wrote the prophecy originally. But the prophecy is so like vague and malleable that, you know, it can accommodate for Susie. Susie has had a lot of character development since, you know, chapter 1, which has pushed her in the direction of being more like this hero from the prophecy. So it really seems like, you know, the universe is trying to correct in on itself. Yeah, that's it. Susie's half human. God, this one's so weird. Because, like, on the one hand, this sounds like the stupidest theory you've ever heard in your entire life. Actually, to be fair, there is piss and shit theory from Chapter 2's era. So, it's not the stupidest, but it's up there, okay? It's like, oh yeah, Susie's half human. Sure, buddy. And yet, she bleed. Why she bleed? Nobody else bleed. And I don't really have a good explanation for that. So I'll put it in maybe. There is some stuff where it's like, okay, maybe Susie picked up a lot of the slang that she's using from humans too. And like, there is a fun parallel if Susie was the only monster in a human community and then like moved here or something. I feel like that might be slightly more likely. Here's my idea for why Susie might bleed and also why she acts and uses like human slang that the other monsters don't seem to really use. My thought about this, because we know Susie just moved not that long ago, is that Susie was the only monster in a human community. Chris was the only human in a monster community. And that's why when you put them together, it's like, you know, it's like poetry. It rhymes. And the reason Susie bleeds is because her body is more corporeal because she's eating human food all of her life. Does that make sense? Because like she eats whatever, you know what I mean? Monsters, we're pretty sure, because magic isn't really a thing, right? Monsters are eating essentially human food in the Deltarune world, and in the Undertale world, they ate magic food. Like that's why it converts immediately into hit points when Frisk eats like a spider donut or something. It's because all the food is made of magic. Because all the monsters' bodies are made of magic, so that's what they need to power their bodies. That's definitely not the case in Deltarune. It's definitely real food. But like maybe because of Susie's specific diet of eating like chalk and something, it's changed her body in a different way. I don't know. I just feel like it can't be that she's half human. That would be something that like, I don't know. You feel like it would be brought up at some point, you know? Like everybody hates Susie, so there's no way they'd be like, keeping the secret out of politeness. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe she never told anybody and nobody's noticed. I don't know. It's weird. Also, the tail thing, where she's always like, I don't have a tail. Really seems like, she grew up in a human community and she hid her tail to be more normal, more like humans. And then, now she's living with monsters, so she could have the tail out if she wanted to, but she doesn't. We're down to night theories. I think it's definitely Des is the night. I think it's not likely Carol's the night. And now I have to talk about Rudy night. I am a little shocked by how popular this has gotten. Because to me, and I know there's been a lot of videos made on it that have actual points of evidence. So it's not quite on the same level as what I'm about to compare it to. But it feels kind of like Rules Night from chapter 2. Where it's like, okay, yeah, there's all these circumstantial pieces of evidence that point to Rules being important. And maybe that could mean that Rules is the night, because you see there's this one thing where Rules' card is the same initials as Roaring Night, and there's this one odd piece of dialogue that Sham says that could sort of lead you down the path of Rules is the night, but the reality of it is that Rules is probably important for some other reason. And all these points that we've picked up on for why Rules seems important are for that, not for the night, right? Whereas I feel like the same thing is happening right now with Rudy for people. Where it's Rudy is definitely going to be important. I don't think any of us disagree on that. And so I think some of these points that people are noticing are supposed to be hinting towards Rudy being important down the line doing something else rather than pointing to him being the knight. Because there's a few problems, okay, I have with Rudy as the knight. I acknowledge the main cool point of evidence for this is that the knight has this rib cage with an eyeball in it, and Rudy is sick with a respiratory illness. So there is a connection there between this seemingly a second entity living in the knight's rib cage and this virus that's living inside Rudy's lungs, right? Cool. Kind of metal. Probably not true, right? I feel like the eye in the rib cage of the knight is supposed to be a comparison to Chris having, a being that lives in their chest, considering that the knight and Chris are also paralleled in so many other ways. And then how does Rudy get out of the hospital without anybody noticing all the time? Rudy could barely stand church without nearly, collapsing from exhaustion. The locations of the dark fountains are also places Rudy could not go without people noticing him. This was a big... Seems how we're bringing back to sort of this chapter 2 theory of the night thing, where it's well, anybody could be the night. Let's figure it out. The weird part about the dark fountains is that the school and the church, or not the church, the library, are very specific public locations. The church dark fountain was made after hours when nobody was around because it was raining. And the chapter 3 dark fountain was made by Chris, so obviously Rudy didn't make that one. But the chapter 1 school fountain, sure, that could have been made the night before. But do they not lock down the hospital? I don't know. They probably don't, because this town has no locks on any of its doors, seemingly. Yeah, I don't know. It feels weird to me in the same way Chris Knight felt weird to me in chapter 2, where it's everybody has to be really oblivious all the time for Rudy to be the knight. That's what it feels like to me, anyway. So I think I'm going to put it along with Carol in not likely. I hope you guys aren't too mad about that opinion. I know I've got some real Rudy Knighters in the chat. And you know what? go for it. If you end up being right, you got bragging rights forever. It's like those people that guess the twists in, you know, cartoons, and everybody makes fun of them because it's so stupid, and then it was real the whole time. That's what this would be, literally. I feel a little bad putting Carol and Rudy Knight in the same tier, because Carol Knight feels at least possible to me, but like, I don't know, it's like, think of it like Carol Knight is at the top of not likely and Rudy Knight is at the bottom of not likely. Okay. Oh yeah, and there's also the thing where his antlers don't even match. So if we're going to graft any deer character onto the knight based on the way the knight looks, you might as well do Carol at least, you know? I don't know. Maybe it's both of them. Or maybe it's the holiday spirit. It's like it's all of their anxieties, you know, mashed up into the knight. And that's why it has Dess's bat for 5 seconds at the beginning of the fight, and why it has Carol's antlers and Rudy's respiratory illness is growing in its chest. It's all the holiday anxieties come together. Whoops, I reinvented the Night is Fear. You should watch that video. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Bye.